Welcome back, Wolfpack Verlis here, and I want to talk about something interesting going on with Pokemon, and just the best way that I've been able to describe Pokemon recently, and all I have to say is Rocket Tag. So the philosophy of Rocket Tag in gaming, or really anything if you don't know what it is, it's pretty much what it sounds like. You're playing the game of Tag, you're it, but with rockets, so it's Tag, you're dead, and that's pretty much where I feel that Pokemon has been going, is it's becoming a just situation of one-hit KOs, or building and switching advantage until you choose a one-hit KO through prediction, or you just finally get into a situation where you bait your opponent into giving up a one-hit KO. And let's just talk about that, because that is something very interesting to consider in Pokemon. Like, is Rocket Tag where this game needs to be? Because if Pokemon's been feeling stale, I feel like that is probably a good reason why it's been feeling fairly stale, is because that you're pretty much playing the game to set up Stealth Rock, set up some kind of entry hazard, which has been most popular, and then you just play the switch game until your opponent loses a lot of health from switching so much, or they eventually succumb to a one-hit KO, and that's also where predictions come into play. I feel Pokemon has become a game that's not even reliant on skill anymore, just predictions and switches, and that's really it. And the reason why I feel that those aren't skill-based is because you don't know what your opponent's going to do. That if you think, okay, they're going to use their most strongest move, so I'm going to switch into something that resists it, they can predict your prediction, or if you do it the other way around, that you expect, okay, he's going to switch into this move because he's obviously not hitting my strongest attack that's going to one-hit KO him, then you make that prediction like, oh, he's switching into this Pokemon, and then you miss your prediction, then you get knocked out for failing a prediction. I feel that that's just something that's pretty problematic right now. And that's like just the idea of Rocket Tag, that every decision in the game feels like it's based off of a one-hit KO, or a non-one-hit KO, or setting up into a one-hit KO. That if you don't one-hit KO your opponent, then okay, they get a free Swords Dance, they get a free Dragon Dance, they get Calm Mind, they get some kind of setup that now makes it an uber tank battle. So you're either doing one thing or the other. You're either going for an absolute one-hit KO and trying to just switch into some tanky Pokemon. Like, one thing you see a lot of is Ferrothorn, Heatran, and then a Ghost Pokemon. Heatran absorbs the Fire super effective hit for Ferrothorn, the Ghost Pokemon absorbs the Ferrothorn and Heatran super effective hits, and you just play around the two or three or even four tanky Pokemon until, you know, you get your Stealth Rocks up, you keep switching until you just take less effective damage on your opponent, and eventually you make that one prediction that snowballs the game because you get that crucial one-hit KO on your opponent's strongest Pokemon, and then you can break through their tanks. And that's really all that Pokemon has become. Now, then when two tanks enter the field at the same time, they try to outwall each other, they try to outgain advantage, and that's another thing that happens, that if you don't one-hit KO or if you can't two-hit KO your opponent because they either resist it so hard or they're just that tanky of a Pokemon, then they get set up and then they become something that tries to go for very high damage and just do more damage and take less damage. And while that's the overall idea of Pokemon, just doing more damage than your opponent's doing to you, I feel with the way that the game is now, it's like the metagame has become just this Rocket Tag of, alright, I'm going to play for those one-hit KOs. Now the reason why I want to talk about this is because it's made my guides feel really stagnant to me personally. I think you guys feel that in the comments. That I've done probably over 500 strategy guides at this point, and it's hard to keep things consistent. Sometimes I'll say, this Pokemon has 70 hit points and 70 defenses. It's a terrible tank Pokemon, and it's going to get one-shot by everything. But at the other side of the coin, I'm like, oh, if you fully invest into the 75 base hit points, you're not going to be a one-hit KO Pokemon anymore. So it really goes along with the Pokemon's identity. That's what makes the guides really hard to do, because when you start breaking it down, okay, is this Pokemon going to be going for tank, or is it not? What is going to one-hit KO this Pokemon that isn't going to one-hit KO other Pokemon? And that's why I also talk about neutral KOs a lot. That if you get a neutral stab, choice banded KO or something that isn't a super effective hit, that still KOs the opponent's Pokemon, that means we're either dealing with a very strong physical attacker, or we're dealing with a very weak defensive Pokemon. And that's kind of the philosophy that I've tried to have for a couple of years now. That even since I started playing in the 4th generation, my idea was, I either don't get two-shot, or I have to one-hit KO my opponent before my opponent one-hit KOs me. And really, in like lower levels of play or something, where you see Pokemon that aren't used as much, you'll see it to where even like super effective hits won't always find a one-hit KO. Or you get into battles where it's like 2 and 3 hit KOs regularly, and that makes it a little more interesting than trying to snowball a prediction off of almost sheer luck and trying to outplay your opponent mentally, which is never guaranteed in any way. And man, this Ferrothorn, like... And my goodness, this Ferrothorn, this video has nothing to do with it. I'm in the battle maze on, but I just want to have something on screen while I'm talking, at least, to have something going on in the battle. But this battle isn't really going anywhere. I feel like I need to get this Ferrothorn burned at some point, and then go for like Max Calm Mind or something. And my last Pokemon is also a Florges, so I really can't do any damage with my Florges either. So back to the game, and that's really like where the competitive scene is right now. That the reason why it's so centralized is because it's all Pokemon that are looking for incredible amounts of damage or incredible amounts of tankiness, and it's really just made it boring. And I think that's just because there's been like a power creep that people haven't really noticed in Pokemon. Every generation introduces more competitive, viable Pokemon, it feels like. 5th generation, there's a lot of Pokemon that we see from the 5th generation that are very powerful, such as the Genies and Ferrothorn and other Pokemon, Amoonguss, really tanky Pokemon that kind of warped the game and made it a bit more tanky, but there's also a lot of very powerful offensive Pokemon. 6th generation, a lot of the 6th generation Pokemon were viable, and Megas were introduced, so really it made it to where it was easier to get a clear idea of what is really good and what isn't really good, and by sticking to the really good Pokemon, you're just playing that safety game. You either know that this Pokemon's going to one-shot almost anything it sees, or it's going to be able to not get one-shot. I don't feel like this video really gets anywhere though, because of course Pokemon's a game where you need to do more damage than your opponent is doing to you, and that's kind of the idea, but I feel that if you're experiencing any kind of boredom with Pokemon right now, or feels like that the overall metagame has become way too centralized, it's because there's a lot of safe play going on right now. Of course there's Pokemon that will absolutely shred teams if it does get that in. A lot of Pokemon that you don't see very often. One that I really like using is Slurpuff. I mean, if Slurpuff does manage to get off its belly drum and you have access to return, Drain Punch, and play rough, very few things do not get one-hit KO'd by you. And in return, the only way of stopping it is doing more than 75% of its health in damage. So with a little bit of tanky investment and stuff, it makes it to where you are playing that Rocket Tag. You don't stop Slurpuff's setup, well then it's going to one-shot you back, or you can just play around it like that. And then when tanks get involved, now we're just playing to where we switch around tanks until your opponent takes enough stealth rocks to get killed by the tank, and then that snowballs the game or that prediction. So I don't really know what can be done for Pokemon that way. I feel it's more a mindset change that is needed, and I've been saying this forever, it feels like. I've been saying this quite a lot at this point, that really it's the mindset that needs to be changed, because a lot of people, they're going with the comfort picks, and they're thinking the game is entirely about switches. They think the game is entirely about like setting up an entry hazard, not capitalizing on your opponent enough, and then trying to get that one switch that manipulates the game enough to win the battle, even though it can be luck based. And then that's where this whole idea of skill in Pokemon is becoming about luck. I feel that the overall mentality isn't doing much to just benefit Pokemon at all, because we're just getting into a more centralized mind state of condensing all the Pokemon that are good and then leaving out all the other ones that aren't good, which is why I'm trying my best. But you know, some Pokemon in these guides, they're absolutely unusable, but that's fine. But then there's other Pokemon that are secretly powerful, and those are the ones I brand OP. Doesn't mean that they're more powerful than a Kangaskhan because they're OP or overpowered, but means they're overpowered compared to the actual perception of that Pokemon. That most people don't think it's good, but secretly it's really, really good, which is kind of like the idea behind my channel overall. So we're almost done with the Pokedex right now, and once we get through there, I was thinking about doing other guides and stuff about like, just okay, the top 5 secret Pokemon from 1st generation, top 5 here, other strategies. We need to kind of like get the metagame reformed in a way, and I don't really know what we can do, because I feel like the problem with Rocket Tag is just the way that Pokemon has developed over time. I feel in the 4th generation, you could almost bring whatever you wanted and just have super amounts of success and have a lot of fun. But now there's like a lot of really condensed mindsets and just Pokemon that are so objectively more powerful than others that's really hard to play around, so there's too many things to counter in the game. That's always been the problem with Pokemon. Back in the 4th generation, I was always saying there's never a guaranteed team that can beat any other team, and that just gets more and more true every year. Okay, 5th generation, more Pokemon counter the new, stronger Pokemon, but also have more powerful Pokemon that aren't countered by as many things, and it just gets really condensed and really crazy when you start breaking it down like this. And of course I would lead Flareon into my superior. So then in 6th generation, now we have Megas. Now we have that mind game of which ability is this, which moveset is this Mega, is it not, does it have an item? You really can't counter anything anymore, and that's why people play with those safe picks. So hopefully we see something change in the 7th generation. I don't really know what can change too much, or if there's really much we can do, which is why I'm trying to hope it's a mentality thing more than anything. So we just need to like keep innovating is, I think, the best thing to take away from this, and we just need to keep changing our mindset. We need to keep expanding upon Pokemon as much as possible. I think innovation is the key, and also accepting luck. And I'm not even talking about the luck made in switches or predictions or anything, but just accepting that this game has RNG elements, just accepting that crazy things can happen and you do have to gamble from time to time, and maybe trying to bring the game down to a more it's weird because either Pokemon's like an absolute just sweet fest or it's an absolute stall game, and it's really hard to deal with in any state like that. So I don't really know what the solution is. Maybe you comment down that below in the comment section and just tell me what you think about the Pokemon game right now, because mostly I just wanted to make that comparison. I was like just thinking around like, man, Pokemon's becoming Rocket Tag. That's a cool idea. I'm gonna make a video on it, and I really knew nothing else to make the video about. So maybe we'll come up with something, but in the end, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Might have made sense, might have just been a ton of rambling that makes no sense whatsoever, but I think it's a cool idea to explore. And what? Power Herb? Okay. Yeah, I think we'll just leave it there. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you all have a nice day. Thank you for watching.